My favorite racetrack is actually Le Circuit Mont Tremblant. The racetrack at Tremblant is an incredible circuit. I like old school racetracks. So big, fast, scary tracks. So motorsport, Watkins Glen, Tremblant, I'll fit that, but also Spa, and Road Atlanta, a little bit is like that's not quite as long, but it's still very fast. So that's what I like.
It's lights out and away we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. My name is Drew, and we are here with all the boys plus one. We have Mr. Robert Burgess in the house today, and he's from Radical Canada, and he's going to tell us a bunch about that. But before, I'm going to read a quick bio because I think he deserves an introduction. So we got the Radical Car Series that was started in 97, but Rob brought that to Canada in 2013 when he acquired the brand. He just got back from the Radical World Finals at the Yas Marina circuit, which was earlier in November. And you are a previous Radical Car Canada Cup winner. So let's hear from Mr. Robert Burgess himself. Tell me a little bit about yourself, more than the 3 points I have written down here, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, firstly, I really want to thank you guys for having me on. This is fantastic, and yeah, I mean, I've been involved in motorsport pretty much my whole life. My dad raced cars and was a huge fan of Formula One and sports car racing, so I kind of grew up in the sport, and just started taking my car to the track, doing track days as a teenager, and then got my racing license, and raced Formula 1600 and did some Formula 2000 racing, and always would have loved to have gone to Formula One, but I realized very early on that I don't really have the driving talent or the funding for that. But was always involved in racing. I did a bunch of sports car racing, primarily in Porsches. And then for the last 12 years, I've been racing Radicals in the Radical Cup here, as well as acting as the Canadian distributor for Radical.
So tell me a little bit more about that. When you decided to love the sport so much that you wanted to bring it to Canada, and not only bring it to Canada and race in the series, but be the man in the series, own it, and be the distributor here.
Yeah, well, really, it was like Radical's philosophy. I never really had the budget to kind of race, professionally or race how I wanted to race. So, I was casting about looking at race cars that are a little bit more accessible, and just for me to race myself. And so I was aware of Radical and kind of what they were doing. I know they were popular in other parts of the world. So I reached out to Radical and I said, hey, listen, racer, I'm kind of interested in one of your cars or getting one. And they said, well, we don't really have a Canadian distributor or a dealer in Canada, but it's actually the number one export market that we want to break into. And so, I was interested in kind of trying to go racing full time or work full time in the racing industry. And this just seemed like an amazing opportunity. And, the Radical car is, it's obviously an amazing product, but also their approach to racing, making it a little bit more accessible, a little bit more affordable for people. I thought that was going to work well for the Canadian market. And 12 years later, here we are, the rest is history. And we've got a very successful Canadian championship for the cars. And, we also do a lot of track days and a lot of testing. And then, that expands into us racing, extensively in the US and around the world.
Before you started getting into Radical?
So professionally, I worked in sales. So I was in car sales. And so primarily I worked with Porsche. So I spent a decade at Porsche. And while I was working there, I was also racing Porsches. And that's how I ran out of money going car racing, was racing Porsches. It's an expensive way to go car racing. And but racing was always my passion. So I was just trying to find a way that I could do it full time and kind of turn it into my own business. And Radical was the perfect opportunity to do that.
So tell me a little bit more about the cars. Like, what makes these cars so radical?
Well, the original concept is, a purpose-built racing car, which is powered by a motorcycle engine. So you're kind of utilizing a superbike engine technology and then marrying it to a pure racing chassis. So the Radical, the car itself is much like a Formula car with a body on it. So when you take the bodywork off, it kind of looks much like a Formula car. And then it's powered by this motorcycle engine. So it's comes from a Suzuki Hayabusa. So the engine's very powerful. It's about 220 horsepower. It's got a 6-speed transmission in it, but it's very lightweight. So you've got this powerful motorcycle engine in this very lightweight, racing car. And so it makes for tremendous performance, especially considering the cost of the car. So the performance per dollar is super high. You have a crazy fast race car for fairly reasonable money. And that, that value proposition is unique to Radical. And that's why they're so popular everywhere.
So you have this new RXC car. How does that one have 655 horsepower?
So the RXC is our halo car. So much like, McLaren would have the P1 or Ferrari just brought up the new F80. It's a halo car really designed to showcase what we can do as a brand using new technology and that sort of stuff. So it's not a volume car for us. It's really just a halo car. So that car is over $300,000 and we only build a handful of them every year. So that's really to showcase what we can do. The model that we sell the most in Canada is our SR3 model, and specifically with the 1340cc engine. And that's the car that we use for our FEL Radical Cup, Canada Cup Racing Series. So most of the cars here in Canada would be Radical SR3s with the 1340 engine. And good used Radical SR3s start as little as $40,000. And if you want a brand new, fully loaded one, it can be up to $180,000. But in
still
that
very
range.
accessible, though. That's not like out of this world for somebody to jump into the sport, like between 40 and let's call it $150,000 if they want to get into the racing sport. Now, what kind of cost would be involved on, like, let's say I bought one for 100 and a quarter. How much would it cost me to drive that car throughout the year? Like if I just wanted to drive it, like the running costs.
Yeah, it's a great point, because the ongoing running costs are a big part of the cost of going racing. People often say buying the car is the cheap part, but, Radical tries to put that on its head. The reality is because the Radical is a lightweight race car, the tires last a long time, the brakes last a long time. It just runs pump gas, so 91 gas. It doesn't use very much of it. It's designed to be cheap and easy to fix if you do damage the car. So the running costs are really very reasonable. And certainly relative to something else that has similar lap time, like a Porsche or a Ferrari or something like that. So the running costs are really very reasonable.
Very cool. Okay, I wanted to segue into Formula One. I love the Radical stuff, and I want to bring that back because we are going to be talking about.
We're going to get back to it.
Yeah, we're gonna go because we're doing a preview episode essentially for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which is the final race of the season, which we are hosting a watch party for at the Scuderia Ferrari Club of Toronto. So let's take that moment to plug that. If you guys aren't doing anything for the final race of the season, we suggest that you come out to the Ferrari Club of Canada. It's up in Vaughan at 551 Javelin. We're going to be there bright and early, cooking pancakes because it's a real early race here in Toronto. So race starts at 8 o'clock. We're going to be there at 7, chefing up a couple hundred pancakes. So we're going to get all that stuff ready. So if you guys want to come down, we are also charging $20 cover, but that cover is going 100% to a donation. And that donation is for Austin, and it's for Racing for Autism. And we're trying to get Austin back in the car and racing for next year. So come support a great cause. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're up at Ferrari again, and those guys always host a good party. So with that plug done, let's get into some Formula One. We had a couple of big announcements this week, and one of them, it's not really an announcement. It's kind of just the inevitability of Checo Perez absolutely falling on his face this year. He did not have a good second half of the season, which he has done in the previous years. So Checo Perez is going to be invited to leave, should probably say the best way that Christian Horner put it. So what are your thoughts, guys, on Checo Perez being invited to leave? They're not going to fire him, because then they have to pay his contract out. They want him to retire, but they're trying to suggest to him that he should make the smart adult decision and retire on his own. What are your thoughts, guys?
I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's going to stick it out. I think he's just going to hunker down and he is just gonna ride it out as long as possible. I don't think there's any going quietly into the night with this guy.
I
That's
don't
what I
know.
think.
I don't know. I think he's going. I mean, at this point, like he's gone through how many seasons we're in. He's always complained about the car that it's designed for how Max drives and not designed for how he drives. He's tried several times to try to you know, bring the car together. He's had a few stints of like, brilliance in 2023 and also in 2022, but that's it. I think that he's on his way out. I think the only thing that makes things easier for him is this entire season. Like it was painful to watch him. And the last race in Qatar, like Zhou Guan Yu was able to score points more than he did, and I'm like, that says it all. I think it's done.
Yeah, so I don't know. With Checo, it's a little bit weird situation. From what I read, that Christian Horner essentially said he might take on kind of like what Daniel Ricciardo did, like a not advisor, but like what's the word I'm
Ambassador.
looking- Ambassador. Thank you. So he might take over like somewhat of an ambassador role. Can I see that happening? Yes and no. I Checo doesn't have that special charisma about him that Daniel Ricciardo had. So I don't know if he would even fit very well into that position with Red Bull. Is it still a possibility? Yes, of course. Is there a possibility that he might leave and retires, as Christian Horner said? I could see that too. So at this point in time, it's difficult to say, but I don't see him leaving on his own terms. I think he's gonna stick it out and he's gonna get everything he can from the team till the very end.
Mr. Burgess, we need your 2 cents on Checo's spot next year.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a Checo fan, followed him for a long time when he was in the midfield cars. I mean, he had so many impressive drives, in the Sauber and then in the Force India and the Racing Point. And when he first went to Red Bull, he also had some great drives and was pretty impressive, helped Max win his first championship. But the last couple of years have just been brutal. I mean, especially this year, it's just terrible. The guy obviously has to go. I don't think he's going to leave on his own. I think he's going to be forced out. But it's certainly time for a change. They got to get somebody else in there.
Now, let me follow this up with another follow-up question then. What do you think is the best option for Red Bull at this point?
It's tricky. I mean, it's so late now. A lot of the seats have been taken. It's hard to know, who to get in there. That's a great question. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo, I think he's done. I can't see him come back. Liam Lawson hasn't been that impressive, really. Yuki Tsunoda, I don't know. I mean, I don't see any real obvious choice.
I think if anyone on the grid deserves it at this point, and I'm gonna quotation, deserves it, I think you got to give Yuki a try. I feel like he's like that. He's been there. He's put in the work. He's outlasted all of his teammates, which in the Red Bull system says something, right? He's still there, and that counts for something in Red Bull's development system. And I think he deserves a chance to just sink or swim at this point, because to your point, Robert, Liam hasn't kind of taken hold of that position as many thought or hoped he would have. Colapinto is still developing, and he hasn't really been as strong as people thought he would be. So I think Yuki is maybe the only choice they have, assuming Sergio leaves. I made the prediction last year that Sergio starts in a Red Bull car next year, which is why I'm holding out that I think he's going to be there still. So regardless of whether it's a logical argument or not, I got to just hold out for pure honor and valor.
Can we just stop there for a second? Is someone taking the Oracle seat?
I'm not.
No.
I'm not an Oracle, Ed. That is all you. You can resurrect that character next year. I am simply committed.
All right.
That's
I can
all.
respect that. I respect that. Yeah, but
Absolutely.
from my end, I think it's going to be Liam Lawson. He's the one that's like really wanted to get the Red Bull seat. He was screaming at the top of his lungs and making sure that every single person in the organization knows that I want this seat, I want to compete, I want to be in Formula One, and no one wanted it more than he did. Yuki Tsunoda, I think, is going to be a missed opportunity because at this point, like, the biggest concerns that they all had was technical feedback limitations, occasional emotional outbursts, which he still does, but he's gotten so much better. I'll give him that. And then the other one would be Franco Colapinto. But then again, the past few races, he's starting to become like Logan Sargent Jr. So a little bit on the, the interesting point of view that he started off really strong, had comparisons with the way he looks with Ayrton Senna, but I'm like, it doesn't really, transfer as much. But the farthest outlier at this point, and something that has been talked about in little murmurs in the industry, is that Isaac Hajar from F2 is a rising star, but he's still too young and he needs a lot more points in order for him to get the super license. So that's going to be few and far between. But they're looking at him and, maybe considering him as a serious contender for 2026. But for me, it's going to be Liam Lawson at this point. Like, Yuki Tsunoda, he's like a firecracker. You don't know when he's going to explode, and when he does, it's always a spectacle.
Yeah, I don't see Yuki going to Red Bull. Basically, from what you all guys said, just he's not the Red Bull type. He's Racing Bulls. He's a Cash App type. Red Bull, he just doesn't. It seems like almost he doesn't fit the culture of the team. I see Lawson 100% going there. Just as point, he wants it. He was performing. He's been pretty vocal about it. As well as I don't really see Red Bull really having too much of a choice at this point in time. Just kind of the top of my head, I mean, it would be very interesting, and I'm obviously dreaming here a little bit, but if they would go with someone like Valtteri Bottas, not saying this because he's my favorite driver, but at the same time, like when he was with Mercedes and helped Lewis win those championships, and he was such a strong team player, I think that could also be potentially helpful towards Max. Now, obviously, Red Bull or Mercedes are two different teams. We don't know the dynamic, how that would fit, but I think that would be an interesting combination. But that's far-fetched out there. For the time being, I think Lawson is the best shot that Red Bull has at this point in time.
I'd be nervous to see anyone else in that seat at this point, because like if you take somebody like Yuki Tsunoda, I would argue that Yuki Tsunoda wouldn't do any better than Checo. So I don't know, by going to someone like Yuki Tsunoda with the chaos that might ensue, that it would be worth it to find out the hard way and just keep someone like Checo, because you know exactly what you're going to get with that. I think Liam Lawson, with a little bit more development, has a better shot at that. But I think, Red Bull really dropped the ball in terms of getting their driver development figured out and what that timeline looks like, because they brought Danny Ricciardo back, dumped him, and now they have this Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson thing, and like, who's next in the mill? And I know you brought up Isaac Hadjar, and that's a great point, Ed, because I think that he was definitely one of the rising stars. And the little F2 that I was watching this year, he was definitely at the top of the timing grids most of the time. And it's funny enough that you got someone like Ollie Behrman and Kimi Antonelli, who were not really winning races at a very consistent rate. And, those guys were getting picked up. And I don't know what they see that we don't, because I only get to see the Formula One races. But, there has to be something more involved. And the first thing I think of is money, that these guys have some sort of backing involved where they can support it, because they were consistently like, 8th, 10th, something like that on the grid. And then you got Isaac Hadjar, who's consistently at the top of the grid. So I'm glad that that Red Bull's taking a look at him, because I think he deserves it. I didn't know the nuances of the super license points, but that's a great point that, and just more proof that Red Bull dropped the ball and wasn't looking ahead far enough. And, they always talk about how their driver development, they even have a sister team for this exact reason. And the fact that they're dropping the ball like this is a huge letdown, and very Red Bull of them.
Well, I was just going to say, you're totally right. They did kind of drop the ball. They didn't think this through. The reality is they could have very easily had Carlos Sainz in that seat for next year. And that would have been the best guy on the grid to put in there. I mean, he's as quick as anybody. And the fact that they couldn't put that together, I'm a Ferrari fan. I'm a Sainz fan. I'm disappointed that he's got to go to Williams next year. But that second Red Bull seat would have been perfect for him.
Follow-up question, because that's a great point, and we did talk about that in one of our episodes, that he would have been. Now, do you think there's a reason that they didn't? My first inclination is one of two things. One is that they didn't have the money because they're paying Max way too much, and somebody like Carlos is, his demand would be way too high. And two, is he too good? Would he be challenging Max a little bit too much? Like, do they need a Bottas or like a better number two? Right? Because, if you looked at Carlos Sainz this year, he was fiery and he was not giving anything to Charles. And if he's the quote unquote number two at Ferrari, he's done a terrible job by winning all those races and not helping out Charles. Right. So I guess I'll pose that question to you.
Yeah, there can be an advantage in a team to having a clear number one and a clear number two. That can make things simpler at times. Now, if you're trying to win the Constructors Championship, obviously you want both cars right at the front, which means they're going to be battling against each other. So there's kind of two different ways to look at that. I think Max would have some say about who he wants as a teammate or what type of teammate he wants. Maybe he didn't want Carlos Sainz. Also, I think it was hard for Red Bull to predict just how bad Perez was going to be this year. He's just falling off a cliff. It's just a joke. I was expecting him to regain his form at some point. He just never has.
It's actually gotten worse. Like now he's burning out clutches and stuff. Like this is not a look. Yeah, like usually after summer break,
Q1. He can't get through Q1 anymore. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not good. Not good. And even if you say it's a bad car, and let's assume that they're apples to apples between him and Max in terms of cars, at least Max can will that car faster. And Checo just can't get dialed in with that car in any way, shape, or form, and it's been a letdown in every sense of the word. So
he got passed on his pit lane start. That's the kind of season that Checo is having right now.
Well said. Yeah, you got passed at a pit lane start. Oh, what a fumble!
That's just everything. That's his season in a nutshell. So we'll find out what happens to Checo after Abu Dhabi. You know who's not going to be there, or not in a car at least, is Esteban.
Oh yes.
And we've talked about Esteban all season and kind of like his personality type and how he fits in, being a team player, and the scrappiness, the little chip he seems to carry on his shoulder. I haven't been a fan of Esteban always, but I also haven't been a fan of recently Alpine and how they're running that team and the management and what they seem to prioritize there. What's everyone's take on Esteban not being there? Do you think this was the right move? Do you think they should have honored the rest of his contract, him being the only race winner for the team over the last, whatever it's been, 3-4 years?
My understanding was he wanted to do the test with Haas, and in order to get, to be allowed to do the test with Haas, he had to give up his race seat to Jack Doohan for the next race. And I think that's a good trade-off for both teams, because, Esteban gets a head start with Haas, Jack Doohan gets a little bit of practice in a Grand Prix. So I think that deal makes sense for both parties. Like you, I'm not a huge Esteban Ocon fan, and I'm not a huge Alpine fan either, but I think this specific situation, it makes sense for both drivers and both teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like at this point, after that snafu in Monaco, it's been pretty much just downhill for Ocon, and all of his other teams as well. Like all of his other teammates have said the exact same thing. He's very, very aggressive. He doesn't play the team game. If he does play the team game, it's always to his favor and not to his teammates. So him actually being released, totally agree with you on that, Robert. Like it's like, it's a good send off in a sense because it's mutually agreeable for both parties. And we get Jack Doohan to be in an actual Formula One race, like full on from FP1 to Q to qualifying all the way to the race, and having a good feel for it and get ready for next year. And Esteban Ocon going to Haas and just enjoying that and seeing how it feels for him, and experiencing the car as well. So hats off to both of them, and that's the end of that.
For me personally, I don't care if Esteban Ocon stays on the team or we get this rookie in. Not a fan, just like you guys, not a fan of the team, not a fan of the driver. Couldn't really care. I think we as fans are ultimately going to be rewarded because this new guy is coming in for the last Grand Prix, and we're all going to be watching him, what he can do for the team and how he is as a driver. I think that's going to be the interesting point to the next race going in. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Drew, before you jump in, I do want to add one other kind of contextual ripple to this question. And it seems like a terrible question because actually, so far, no one actually cares about the driver or the team. However, we do have a Constructors Championship going on. There's 13 points between Alpine, Haas, and VCarb right now. Do you think they would be better? Not that Ocon has had like some spectacular races recently, but do you think they're better served trying to solidify that sixth place with two veteran drivers, or are they kind of risking it by bringing in Doohan at this point?
I think that 13 points doesn't seem like a lot when you're talking about the top teams, but when they're fighting over 1 and 2 points each with one race left, 13 points is a lifetime. You know what I mean? Like, look at our boys over at Stakes Albert. They got 4 points last week in one race. Like that, it took them all season to get those 4 points. So I think that spread, be it only 13 points, is a little bit bigger. To your point though, Walker, quick answer. Yeah, I think having Esteban and Gasly in there would probably be the safest bet to try to get them as many points as possible. I don't know if we've seen enough of Jack Doohan. And to Thomas's point, like, is it exciting that he's going to be in there? Yeah. Are we going to see what, quote unquote, he can do? Probably not. It's the last race of the season. The pressure is going to be incredible. He's jumped in during one race or a couple practices or whatever, but like, that's not enough. You know what I mean? It's not going to be a big enough sample size to see what he can do. I think it's more of just like a practice at this point. And that is kind of getting back to what my point was going to be, was I think that there's way more going on here. Like, I think, he wanted to go practice at Haas. Give me a break. On the last race of the season, like, he definitely pissed in someone's cornflakes and someone's cheesed about it. And they're like, okay, PR team, how do we spin this so that it looks like you're leaving on good terms? And we did this because it's a smart play for us. And everyone looks like a hero. But ultimately, this is a stupid move because there's contracts involved. Like, how many lawyers had to get involved to do, like, it's an absolute dumpster fire in terms of something to do in, a 6-day turnaround from the last race. So unless they've been plotting this for some time, I think somebody got angry at somebody, and this is the best they could sort this out.
I think I know who it is.
Who is it? Oh, yes.
Oh, fucking Oracle. What
Go
are you
ahead.
gonna
No.
I know who he's going to say, but please take it away, Ed.
Flavio Briatore.
Yeah.
When that guy is there, it's always something. It's always going to be a little bit sketchy, a little bit slimy, a little bit of the what's happening? You already know something's happening back there.
Ed, Robert and Flavio are best friends.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't say
I
that.
can't believe you just said that about
We
him.
went to high school together. Come on.
Wow. So
About
rude.
Flavio Briatore and his role in all this, and this has a Flavio feel to it. How this whole deal kind of went down or came together. And so Flavio has a history of success in Formula One, so he hopefully knows what he's doing. But yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend.
Ed was so embarrassed he left the podcast. I can't believe that. He froze up and just decided to dip. He was like, the shame he was dealing with. Oh, and he's back.
And he's
No,
back.
I didn't. Internet issues. My bad. Sorry, guys.
Mhm.
The internet shamed you. Yeah. That was Flavio from France just disconnecting you.
Yeah.
His PR team.
How dare you?
It was an eventful race in Qatar. I feel like there was so much that happened. I think one of the big stories was the penalties, the FIA, and the imposing of different penalties, rules, not bringing out safety cars when there was a clear hazard on the track. So much going on. Robert, you're in this world of racing and having to deal with these governing bodies and things like that. Did you see, it seemed there seems to be a consensus amongst all the commentators that we're listening to that the severity of the penalties made absolutely zero sense throughout the weekend, whether it's Max's 1 place drop, the 10-second stop and goes, the drive-through penalties, et cetera. What was your take on that?
I mean, I'm not a fan of penalties. I really want the drivers to kind of sort it out on the track, especially these ticky-tacky penalties, like for Max to lose pole for going too slow on a cool down lap. That's ridiculous. That never should have happened. That rule doesn't really even need to be in place. And then the same thing in the race when Lando Norris got a penalty for not slowing for the yellow flag. Well, the yellow flag it was for a piece of debris lying on the track. He could see that it's not a real safety issue. There was nothing dangerous about what he did. So I thought that was ridiculous. And then even Lewis Hamilton getting a speeding in pit lane penalty, during the safety car when they were driving through there. I thought that was also ridiculous. So I don't like the penalties. I thought none of them were really necessary. And I think they should put it back in the driver's hands and just let them race.
I think we should merge this with the mail box question that we had Derek reach out about. And he wanted us to talk about the almost blatant manipulation from the FIA. We've been talking about this, them trying to make the drivers' championship a little bit more competitive, giving max grid penalties, all this kind of stuff, and essentially, trying to even the playing field between Lando and Max to make the season more exciting, because obviously Liberty Entertainment is just trying to sell tickets and media. And, we come to this race here, and this is very easily where McLaren could have absolutely secured the Constructors' Championship. And once they gave Lando that stop-go penalty that essentially added, 30 seconds to his race, they extended the Constructors' Championship to the final race. And coincidence? I don't know. Seems a little suspect as far as I'm concerned. I think that, I was going to watch the last race anyway. So I don't know why they're trying to hype this up, but are we going to go into the final race in Abu Dhabi with a constructors battle ensuing? 100%.
I mean, if we finalize the constructors for, let's say, in Qatar, there won't be drama anymore for the final race, and you wouldn't have people really watching and trying to find out who's actually going to win. Is it going to be Ferrari? Is it going to be McLaren? And this was another point too before you asked that question, Drew. Michael Massey's looking so good right now from 2021 compared to the snafu that happened in Qatar. I was looking at it the entire race. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's it's a dumpster fire. Just the amount of penalties, and the penalty for Lando Norris, which was, I don't know, it baffles me. On one flag at the middle of the straight, it was yellow, and then at the end of the straight it was green, and I'm like, and then they called him a 10-second stop go penalty. I'm like, oh, to answer your question, Drew, I definitely feel that this is a way for they were looking for a way to extend this championship, extend this race, extend the drama. And the winner of all this is Drive to Survive. Yet again, Netflix has won this all over again. So, I mean, good for them. They've created this little soap opera type deal, and looking forward to the final race of the season.
It was, honestly, in my opinion, was a little bit of what Ed said, shit show, dumpster fire. The penalties were one thing, just pure ridiculous, right? We as fans definitely got entertainment from it, and the ridiculous amount. What really struck out to me was that mirror incident, how essentially two cars had punctures because of that, because FIA did not call a safety car when it was clearly a safety issue. That boggled my mind. Again, to that point, Michael Massey would have called a safety car or whatever it would have been. Here, nothing. Let's just race on as, nothing's on the track. It's clear. And I feel so bad for the two drivers. I think, what was it, Lewis and Sainz, I think, that got the punctures. And I feel so bad for them because that did not need to happen. And, there's some conspiracy theories out there with the FIA president that's doing side deals and, basically hyping up for the last race and making drama. Who knows if that's true or not, but I can see something like that happening as well, right? So we as fans, we got the entertainment. We were definitely entertained, but it wasn't fair what happened that race with the penalties for sure.
The word that keeps coming back to me is just consistency. And in a series and a sport that prides itself on technical precision and being the best of the best and the pinnacle of a sport and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that you can just have a race director and, a marshaling system where we're like, we're going to give this guy, let's go with B on this one, right? Or they throw a dart at a board and they're like,
I feel like
that
they
wouldn't-
spun
that
one of
wouldn't
those
go."
wheels,
The
that goes
wheels,
like, yeah, they're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but use
Like
this one in forever. Like, what's a 10-second stop go penalty? I had to open up a Google thing and be like, what is this penalty? It's literally the harshest penalty you can give somebody. It's crazy.
It
I
just
haven't even
boggles
seen
my
it.
mind. And I think I think that's one of the biggest issues that maybe teams and drivers are having is that there's no consistency from race to race. And there's a new race director in right now. Maybe he's trying to leave his mark and kind of set his standards. But I'm pretty sure there's a rule book somewhere, right? And within this rule book, I'm pretty sure it probably stipulates the penalties that would be appropriate for any kind of given infraction. But I just feel like, Drew, that was a perfect example. Just spin the wheel and see where we get. But it does make for a fun final race. Lots going on. We have obviously the Constructors Championship going to be finalized, and not to mention down the ranks as well, figuring out what teams like Haas and Alpine and VCarb are going to end up. We have Hamilton's last race with Mercedes, which who knows what that's going to be like. It's like I'm either going to cry or I'm just going to be angry the entire time. I'm not really sure which yet. But who better to tell us about this track than Robert? Because Robert, you were just there. You were just doing some laps, right?
Yeah.
What do we have to look forward to? Because I was doing some research earlier and playing F1 2024 on my phone. I was doing some laps, but I feel like you would be better qualified to maybe speak to this.
Well, I did spend a bunch of laps in the simulator before I went to Yas Marina to get a feel for it. And I'm not a big sim racer, but certainly using a racing simulator to learn a new circuit before you go there, that is I think the most valuable thing that you can learn from using the simulator. And I mean, obviously I've never been to Yas Marina before. I'd never been to the Middle East before, so I didn't really know what I was in for. And firstly, the Yas Marina circuit, they said that they had spent $1 billion developing it. I can believe it. When you go there, it is spectacular. I mean, just the garages, the paddock, the track, the hotel, all the surrounding area. I mean, everything is just beautifully built and tremendously maintained, and everything's very clean, and it's just awesome. I mean, the facility itself, I was blown away. And I've been to lots of F1 tracks in Montreal and in Coda and Portimao and Silverstone, and Yas Marina just blows them all away. It really is just a spectacular circuit. And, in terms of driving the track, it's obviously built for Formula One. So it's very long. It's very fast. It's got a lot of long straightaways. So, which in a Radical is not ideal because the Radical is not a high horsepower car. So, you've got 4 long straightaways every lap, and it's cliche, but I could have kind of read a book while I was going down some of these straightaways because it took a long time to get down them. And, so the lap time wise, my fastest lap of the event, the World Finals, would have been about 2 minutes, 5 seconds. I think Max's pole last year was a 1:33. So I'm about 30 seconds a lap slower than an F1 car around Yas Marina. And that's in a Radical, which is in a pretty fast race car. So it gives you a sense
faster than Checo, though. Still faster than Checo.
Gives you a sense of just how fast the F1 car is. But yeah, the Yas Marina circuit. So sector 1, you come down the front straightaway, which has beautiful garages and grandstands lining both sides of it. And then when you get down to turn 1, it really kind of funnels down. The straightaway's super wide. It funnels down into turn 1. It's a medium speed left-hand corner, so kind of third gear in a Radical. Important to get a good exit because after that you have turn 2, 3, and 4, which are the S's. That's all easy flat out. So you're flat out through that whole section until you get down to turn 5, which is kind of like the hairpin there, which is a very heavy braking zone. And that's probably the best opportunity to pass on the track is into turn 5. So 2021, the title fight between Max and Lewis, that's where Max passed Lewis, was down into turn 5 on that last lap. It's the best passing zone. So then coming out of there, you've got a long straightaway, which brings you down to the chicane, which is a left-right combination. And it is ridiculously slow, like bottom of first gear slow. You're just crawling through the left, and then you got to get back to the right. And it's just very slow. So putting the power down coming out of those corners is really tricky just to not get any wheel spin. And the curbs are quite high there. So you don't really want to go over the curbs there. They're fairly violent. And you also got to be careful about track limits there, because if you overcook it on the way in or on the way out, very easy to go 4 wheels kind of over the white line. So then after that, you have the run down to, which they call turn 9, which is a fabulous corner. So it's increasing radius. So you turn in kind of heavy braking down to about 3rd gear. And then once you get to the apex, it opens up. So the second half of the corner is completely flat out. So very high G, long, fast left-hand turn. And then that brings you back down. You kind of blast down to the hotel. So this is where you come up to the W Hotel. And the W Hotel section, Sector 3, is like a street circuit. There's no runoff. There's guardrail on both sides. It's 2nd gear, 90-degree turns. So you go from this big, flat out, wide open, expansive track down into this little street circuit for, a few corners through there. So you're kind of a right, left, double left, and then a right, kind of coming around the hotel. And then once you come back out from the hotel section, there's a fast left that then leads you back on the front straightaway. And so that's kind of a full lap at Yas Marina. And, the track, I would say, it's relatively straightforward. It's not that difficult to track because there's not a lot of elevation change. So you can see where you're going. And like a lot of modern F1 tracks, there's a lot of paved runoff for most of the track. So with the exception of the hotel section, there's lots of paved runoff everywhere. And so that means you can make a mistake and get away with it. Growing up, I raced primarily at motorsport, at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, where if you make a tiny mistake, you're immediately into a guardrail or a wall or something, whereas here there's lots of paved runoff. And so I can see how track limits could be an issue because it's very tempting to just run wide into the runoff and then come back on again. So, but yeah, I'm driving the track was incredible, and I would definitely go back and do it again. And I'm excited to watch the race now this weekend, having just driven the track and just raced there to kind of see what it's all about.
So
Basically
let me
took
ask
the
you
words
this
out of my
then, too.
mouth.
But yeah, before you, right? Before you had got to the Yas Marina circuit, like where else have you traveled with the Radical series?
So I've raced extensively through North America. So our Canadian Championship runs at Motorsport, Calabogie, Toronto Indy, GP3R, so Trois-Rivières in Quebec. We've raced at Mount Tremblant as well. So that's kind of the Canadian Championship. But then I've raced extensively in the U.S. Championship. So we've raced at Watkins Glen, VIR, Road Atlanta, Sebring, Circuit of the Americas, Sonoma, Laguna Seca. So been around a bit. And then over in Europe, I've been fortunate enough to drive at Silverstone. And I've also driven at the Nürburgring, and I've driven at Portimao in Portugal. That's where the World Finals were last year. So yeah, I've been to a few racetracks.
Now you're
What's
just
your
showing
favorite
off.
racetrack for a Radical car?
My favorite racetrack is actually Le Circuit Mount Tremblant. The racetrack at Tremblant is an incredible circuit. I like old school racetracks. So big, fast, scary tracks. So Motorsport, Watkins Glen, Tremblant, I'll fit that, but also Spa, and Road Atlanta, a little bit is like that. It's not quite as long, but it's still very fast. So that's what I like. So I like big, fast flowing corners, lots of elevation change. Tremblant has all of that. It's just a spectacular place to go racing.
Amazing.
Yeah. Although I will give you hats off. A
Yeah.
couple of tracks that are underrated that I forgot to mention is Barber Motorsport Park in Atlanta, or in Alabama, is another fantastic, very underrated racetrack. And then also Portimao. So the Radical World Finals was in Portimao last year. And Portimao, of course, hosted the Portuguese Grand Prix in the COVID season there. And Portimao is another spectacular racetrack and kind of underrated. And, the Radical World Finals, we went to Portimao and then we went to Yas Marina. And so now we're trying to top that. Where do we go next year? It's tough, because those are both iconic, current Formula One circuits. And it's like, maybe we can do it at Monaco. Like, I don't know where we go from here.
That's incredible. I'm so jealous right now. Like, there's like pieces of me that are just like, Rob, shut up. Like, why are you bragging? Like, this is crazy. You've literally listed like every place in North America that has a track. You're like, been there, raced it. And then you're to the point where you're like, Spa, it's all right. Whatever.
Well,
Whatever.
You can get yourself a Radical and go do all these tracks. Radical has a program we call Race the World. So when you own a Radical or race a Radical, you have the opportunity to go do all of these fantastic events and all these fantastic tracks. And so that's something that, again, trying to make racing more accessible. We take people who've never raced before. We do driver training with them. We kind of coach them up, get them into some smaller races here in Canada. They can kind of grow their skills and experience, and then we can go race in the US, and then we can go race in Europe. And, that's kind of how we do it. And that's, and a lot of drivers have gone through that whole program.
And can you split it 4 ways so that we can share the cost?
Good question.
Yeah.
We can work
Love the
something out.
question.
It look like.
We can work something out, definitely.
Your payment plan we can figure out here. But seriously, if someone did want to learn more about Radical and getting into it racing, what's the best place to find out?
So you can check out our website, which is radicalcanada.ca. And then we're very active on social media. So on Instagram and X and Facebook and LinkedIn, we've got a lot of information there. So we're pretty easy to find. And I always encourage people, if they're interested in Radical, come by my shop. I got this beautiful shop right in Downsview, and I'd extend that invitation to you guys. Come by the shop. I got a bunch of race cars there we can check out. And then beyond that, come see us at the track. We do a lot of testing events that are open to everyone, and then obviously a lot of races. We just put out our schedule for 2025. We're going to be back at Toronto Indy again this summer, so that's kind of a highlight of our season. Since you guys all live in Toronto, you should come out and watch that race.
Hell yeah.
So
That sounds amazing.
Say less. Say less.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We're definitely going to take you up on that offer to go check out your shop, because I think that will hold a lot of value. And if we bring the cameras and stuff, we can definitely put some cars to a name, and we can go over the Radical cars and kind of, we've talked a lot about them, and be able to show everybody 1-to-1 would be super, super cool. And we can see if my fat ass can get inside one of those cars.
well,
The downside is... Go ahead, Robert.
I was just going to say how, Formula One has sort of dictated the design and build of the Radical. So traditionally a Radical was a 2-seat car, but we offer a center seat option. So single seat, center seat. So like the car I drove in Yas Marina was a center seat. And then we incorporated the Formula One steering wheel. So we used to have just a basic steering wheel and then the dash display mounted on the dash. Well, now we've incorporated the display into the middle of the steering wheel, along with all of the buttons and switches. So again, just like Formula One. And then last year, we introduced a Halo cockpit safety device. So again, just like Formula One, it's a halo that comes around and then attaches down into the car. And, I was sitting on the grid at Yas Marina before the race, and I'm in my center seat car. I'm looking through my halo down at the start lights. I'm fooling around with the buttons and switches on my steering wheel, getting the car configured for the race. And I'm like, man, this is like my Formula One fantasy right here. It's just incredible.
Good for you.
So what,
living the
so
dream.
what you're actually saying is that Drew will not fit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're making it an F1
That
car,
was
buddy,
the
but
politest. You're not going to fit ever.
gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun. We got a couple more things to go. Last race of the season, really quickly, top 3 on the podium. Who do you have, Robert? We'll start with you.
Well, you see, I've got my Aston Martin shirt. I'm a big fan of the Aston Martin Formula One team, but they're not going to be on the podium. But I'm also a huge fan of Ferrari, so I really want to see Charles Leclerc up there, and I would love to see Carlos Sainz get a podium before he leaves Ferrari. It might be his last podium ever. And it would be good. Norris has had such a good year. He missed out on the title, but it would be great to see Norris win the race and go out on a high.
I like it. Okay, I'm gonna go with
Drew.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna say Lando doesn't have a chance at this one. I'm gonna go with Carlos Sainz. I think he's just gonna throw something together. I think Max is gonna be up on the podium because that's what Max does, and I'd love to see George Russell push it up there.
Good choices. I actually was going to say Carlos Sainz too for the final race with Ferrari. He's going to go out with a bang because next year he's going to be in a Williams, and we all know how that runs.
It won't be banging anywhere.
Oh, no, yeah, definitely not. But yeah, Carlos Sainz, and then I see Leclerc being coming in second, and George Russell for third.
I see Max being first, obviously. As much as I would want Carlos Sainz to be first, I don't see that happening. I see Carlos getting second or third, but first I just don't see it. So I'm going to say Max, Carlos, and Hamilton.
Amazing. I'm very actually close to you, Thomas. I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to go Charles, Max, Lewis.
Charles, Max, and Lewis. All right.
Charles, Max, Lewis. So we'll see how wrong we all are next week. Be sure to kind of tune in for the Abu Dhabi recap. Gentlemen, there's only one way to end an episode like this. Robert, I don't know if you're familiar, but we end every single episode when we have everybody here with a game we like to call Name That Sponsor. Drew?
Name that sponsor.
Thank you.
Name that sponsor.
That is our game show music. It's a really easy game. I'm going to name 3 sponsors. You have to tell me which car they are on and what that company does. Super simple. We're going to recap the scores so far for the season. So far, Drew is in first place with 33 points. We have Ed at 18, and we have Thomas at 12. This week, each right answer is worth 3 points, so anything can happen. It's wide open. Not really. It's kind of wide open. Robert, you can swoop in and kind of you could tie for third. Absolutely. Anything can happen.
I'm a big Anorak and a fan of the history of Formula One, and so it's always interesting to go back and look at the old cars and look at the old sponsors. Be like, who are these people? So yeah, this sounds interesting.
We might have a ringer on our hands. Okay, the first sponsor is Athletic Propulsion Labs. Athletic Propulsion Labs. Drew, you want to go
Robert,
first?
You're our guest. No, Robert's our guest.
Okay.
We're gonna let him shoot first.
Give him some hints.
I've never heard of this. I'm going to say Williams.
And what does the company do?
Oh, performance training.
What's the name of the company again? I got all excited.
Athletic Propulsion Labs.
Oh, I'm gonna go with. I'm actually looking at Rob's shirt right now to see if they're on the Aston Martin. Let's go with Haas because it sounds super American, and yeah, I'm gonna say it's like athletic. What's it called? Like athlete training.
I was gonna say kind of what Drew said as well, athletic training, but more like with sim racing. And I'm gonna say Alpine.
I will go with V-Carb, and they do sports science and recovery.
You're all wrong. So Athletic Propulsion Labs is on Red Bull, and they make shoes.
Okay.
Just like
I was way off. Okay.
Sneakers, all sorts of shoes.
Okay.
Wow, they are expensive.
Okay, how
Like
much?
$660 Canadian for a sneaker.
They better propulse me.
Or they're gonna repulse me. Okay, next. Lemo. Lemo. Lemo? I'm gonna go with Lemo.
Sounds like European, I think. Maybe Alpine.
And what do they do?
What do they do? Candy.
Okay.
Okay, I like it. I'm gonna go with McLaren, and I think they are a logistics company.
I'm gonna say Williams and clothing brand.
I will say Red Bull Oil Company.
Okay, you're all wrong again. Lemo is an electronic and fiber optic connector manufacturer. It is known for producing the push-pull connectors. There you go.
Sure.
And they are on stake.
Wow.
Stake number.
We're all throwing up goose
Okay,
eggs
left
here.
field on that one.
Okay,
go.
let's go.
All right, fun game, right, Robert?
This
Okay,
seems
the
really
last,
hard.
It is hard, yeah.
the last sponsor on our list today is Stratasys. Stratasys.
Strat assist. Strat, I believe, is a mode on the steering wheel that they can change. But this is the sponsor. I don't know if it's related
Just to be clear.
to
It Stratasys.
With an Stratasys.
that. Oh,
Okay.
Stratasys.
Strata. Yeah, Stratasys. Just in case that
I'm
helps
gonna
you.
say,
Providing clarity.
yeah, no, that doesn't help.
No, I don't think so.
I'm gonna say they're on Ferrari, and it's an app.
Very good guess. Okay, I'm all the way guessing too. I'm gonna go with V-Carb, and I think they do like 3D modeling and rendering.
I'm gonna say V-Carb as well. Automotive parts.
I will say medical prosthesis Williams.
So Stratasys is on McLaren, and they are a manufacturer of 3D printers, software, and materials, which I think gives Drew the point.
Yeah.
That's a.
I think you got that one.
I said 3D
3D
modeling and
rendering. Yep, I think that falls into the software. And what did you say you didn't? What team did you say, Drew?
V-Carb.
Oh, yeah, V-Carb.
Yeah. I have Formula One photos all over here. I just pick a random car and just like, that looks good.
That was close, because that would have been the first week that we would have everyone would have goose egged. Yeah.
Mm.
But pull it out. Drew extending his lead to 36. Ed, 18, and Thomas with 12. Robert, good try, man. It's a hard game.
This is the hardest game on the planet.
The next
Thomas has
time,
been
I'm
here-
ready.
Thomas has
There will
been
be
here
next time. I
all
promise there'll be
year.
next time.
Thomas has been here all year, and he only has 12 points. So
Yeah, we had Chris Palestri on, and he was beating Thomas for like more than half of the season, and he was on here one time. So
yeah,
Oh,
Chris did actually
knows
quite well.
racing, so I can see that.
yeah, he was really good actually.
Gentlemen, this has been so much fun. Robert, thank you so much for your time. All of the links, everything we need for people to find you, it's going to be in the show notes.
Guys, please support us for the final race of Formula One. I want to call out again our partners, Racing with Autism and the Scuderia Club of Ferrari, Scuderia Ferrari Club of Toronto. And see us there and support, because we want to. I mean, I'm happy to say that Austin is actually back on track, and he was able to put everything together. But now we're trying to keep him on track for the rest of the season. So, yeah, I would like to support these guys, because, as you know myself, like, I have boys that have autism too. So please support if you can. If you can't be there, spread the word. Get as much as we can for the support that we can give for Austin and for Jason as well. So giving them a shout out, and hope to see you on Sunday.
Everybody, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, tell a friend, go check out the Discord. Lots of great F1 talk happening in there as well. Again, links in the show notes. This has been Formula One True North. For Drew, Thomas, Edward, our amazing guest Robert, I'm Walker, and we will talk to you next week recapping Abu Dhabi.
Wait a second.
Chuck.
Let me just. Yeah.
Hell yeah, let's go.
It's lights out and away we go.